Carlos Alcaraz just did something no other player has done. At 22 years old, he is now the youngest career Grand Slam winner in history. But what makes this moment special isn't just what happened, it's how little sense the journey made. The 2026 Australian Open ended with history. The kind of history that permanently changes how we talk about the sport. Carlos Alcaraz beat Novak Djokovic in 4 sets to win the Aussie Open, completing the career Grand Slam at an age where most players are still figuring themselves out. And Djokovic lost his first ever Australian Open final. 2 records colliding, 1 record breaking, 1 era officially taking the mantle. But the funny thing is, if you only remember the final, you've missed the real story. Because this tournament didn't make sense. Not emotionally, not statistically, not logically. And that's exactly why it deserves a deep dive. So let's rewind. Melbourne, January 18. Before the tournament even began, something quietly historic happened that almost no one talked about. For the first time in the Open era, every single player who reached the 4th round on the men's side was seeded. No lucky losers, no wildcards, no fairy tale underdog runs. That should have produced a clean, predictable tournament. Instead, it produced one of the strangest Australian Opens we've ever seen. Because what followed wasn't about who was better, it was about who survived the biggest moments. Carlos Alcaraz came in as the #1 seed, and the most complete player in the world. No holes, no service issues, no real weaknesses. He dropped no sets through the early rounds, but what stood out wasn't domination. It was his efficiency. He shortened points, he came forward more than he ever has in Melbourne, and against Alex de Minaur in the quarterfinals, Alcaraz went to the net relentlessly, winning over 80% of those points. He wasn't there to grind in the heat, he was there to end matches fast. On the other side of the draw, Novak Djokovic was doing the exact opposite. Djokovic came into this tournament with more question marks than any slam in years. He was 38, he'd shown signs of physical decline in 2025, and yet, once again, he kept advancing. But here's the weird part. From round 3 through to the semi-finals, Djokovic didn't win a single set. He advanced due to Jakub Mensik's withdrawal. Then he was gifted a ticket to the semi-finals when Lorenzo Musetti retired after being 2 sets to love up and charging toward victory. And this is where the question marks really started flying. Djokovic was the oldest player left in the draw, by far. Yet somehow, he was also arguably the most refreshed. So his run became a strange blend of luck, resilience, and psychological pressure. And the numbers back it up. In multiple matches, Djokovic won fewer total points than his opponent. He hit fewer winners. He faced significantly more breakpoints. And yet, he still won. This wasn't dominance. This was daylight robbery. Meanwhile, a completely different storyline was quietly unfolding in the middle of the draw. Learned Etienne proved that last year was not a fluke, and he didn't just outlast his opponents, he dominated them. Compared to last season, his average rally length dropped. His forehand winner count jumped, his net approaches doubled. This was no longer a grinder hoping the other guy missed. This was a player consciously shifting styles on the biggest stages. And when he finally ran into Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinals, the match became a masterclass in pressure serving. But the real test was still to come, because for the first time since 2013, the top 4 men's seeds all reached the semi-finals of the Australian Open. And that's when the tournament hit its crescendo. The first semi-final between Carlos Alcaraz and Alexander Zverev became the longest Australian Open semi-final ever. 5 hours and 27 minutes of attrition, tension, and a collapse caught in 4K. Alcaraz took a commanding 2-set lead, and up until that point, he hadn't dropped a single set all tournament. Then the Melbourne heat struck. He began cramping in the 3rd. After a sketchy medical timeout and a multilingual diatribe from the German, Zverev capitalized and clawed his way back into the match. Most amazingly, even while clearly struggling, Alcaraz still forced Zverev to win sets 3 and 4 in tight tiebreaks. Zverev found himself serving for the match in the 5th set, 1 game away from what likely would have been his first Grand Slam title. And then it slipped away, and won the next 3 games to reach the final. Then came the night session. Djokovic versus Jannik Sinner. Sinner had won the last 2 Australian Opens. He was the defending champion, and he looked rock solid after dismantling Ben Shelton in the quarters. And for large stretches of this match, he was the better player. But tennis isn't decided on stretches. It's decided on moments, and Djokovic is the king of those moments. Sinner created more breakpoints, Djokovic had fewer chances, but he converted the ones that mattered. In the 5th set, Sinner reached love 40 on Djokovic's serve. 3 breakpoints, Djokovic saved all 3. And somehow, against the odds, Djokovic became the oldest man to reach an Australian Open final, setting up a match with history on the line for both players. Which brings us back to the end, the final. Carlos Alcaraz versus Novak Djokovic. Djokovic had never lost an Australian Open final. Alcaraz had never won one, let alone been close. And Djokovic came out firing. He took the first set 6-2, and for a moment, it felt like the clock had rewound. But the rest of the match followed the pattern of the entire tournament. Alcaraz won the second set 6-2, backed it up in the third, then after resistance in the fourth, proved to be too much for the 38-year-old, closing it out and cementing his name in the history books. And just like that, Alcaraz joined a list reserved only for the elite of the elite, and he's on a fast track to becoming the most accomplished tennis player the sport has ever seen. The Australian Open was chaotic, but not random. The seeds held, the best players advanced, yet the outcomes were decided by injuries, nerves, tiebreaks, and tiny windows where everything flipped. Alcaraz didn't just win the tournament, he stole it. Djokovic didn't just lose, he proved one last time why beating him still deserves applause, and delivered one of the best losing speeches of all time. The 2026 Australian Open ended with a bang. History was made, but the reason we'll remember it is because for 2 weeks straight, tennis reminded us of its cruelest truth. You don't always win slams by being better. You win them by surviving moments that shouldn't be survivable. And in the end, only one player was built for the moment. What are your predictions for the next slam at Roland Garros? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy these deep dives, consider subscribing.